The first thing I saw when I got back into town was my mailbox laying sideways in a pile of dirt, and I remember thinking, huh, that's weird, before I looked up and realized my house was gone. Not damaged, not burned, gone. Like somebody had erased it off the map while I was on a business trip eating stale airport sandwiches 2 states away. And the craziest part wasn't even the bulldozers or the debris or the orange fencing wrapped around my property like it belonged to somebody else now. It was the fact that the people responsible were still actively building homes 50 feet away like nothing happened. Now, before I get into all that, you gotta understand what this place meant to me. The house wasn't impressive. Nobody driving by would have looked twice at it. Little red brick duplex-style ranch on the edge of Millhaven, Tennessee, right where the suburbs start turning into fields and gravel roads. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, tiny kitchen with old oak cabinets I refinished myself one summer after my divorce. The kind of place where the screen door squeaks every time you open it and the AC rattles for 10 seconds before kicking on. But it was mine. I bought it when I was 32 with money I saved driving commercial freight routes across 4 states. Took me years to pay off. Missed birthdays, slept in truck stops, ate gas station food that probably shortened my lifespan by a decade. But eventually I owned that place outright, and once the mortgage disappeared, it became the one thing in my life that finally felt stable. By then I was renting it out to a guy named Leon. Quiet dude, former Army mechanic, paid on time every month, watered the plants without me asking. Honestly, as landlords go, I had it easy. Behind the house sat about 6 empty acres of overgrown land nobody touched for years. Kids used to ride dirt bikes back there. Sometimes deer wandered through in the mornings. Then one day a giant sign showed up near the road. Cedar Creek Estates. Luxury homes starting in the 700s. That was the beginning of the headache. A few weeks later, I met the project manager by accident while checking my mailbox. Tall guy, expensive sunglasses, spotless boots that had clearly never touched real mud. Name was Brent Talford. He walked over smiling like a politician 10 days before an election. He said, "You the owner here?" I said, "Depends who's asking." He laughed a little too hard at that. Brent had this smooth corporate energy, like every sentence had already been practiced in front of a mirror. He told me they were bringing growth to the area. Walking trails, upscale homes, retail space eventually. He talked about property values like he was reading scripture. Then he glanced at my rental house. Not rudely exactly, but in that way people do when they're mentally calculating what shouldn't exist near their investment. "You ever think about selling?" he asked casually. I told him no, and I swear something shifted in his expression for half a second. Tiny little crack in the smile. "Well," he said, "construction's starting soon, so things around here are gonna change pretty fast." I remember watching him walk away thinking, that sounded less like a warning and more like a promise. Still, life moved on. 3 months later, I got sent to Oklahoma for work. Just a short contract inspecting warehouse equipment outside Tulsa. Nothing dramatic. I figured I'd be gone maybe 4 days. Second night there, Leon called me around 6:30. At first he sounded calm. He said, "Hey man, they got bulldozers behind the property now." I told him that made sense. Construction had probably started. Then there was this pause. Not a normal pause either, the kind where you can hear somebody trying to decide whether they're overreacting. Then he goes, "Yeah, except one of 'em just pulled into your driveway." I sat up immediately. "What do you mean in my driveway?" "I mean, literally in your driveway." I could hear engines in the background. Beeping sounds. Men yelling. Then Leon lowered his voice. "I think they think this house belongs to them." I still remember that sentence because at the time it sounded impossible. Like saying somebody accidentally demolished the wrong moon. I told Leon to get out of the house immediately and call the police if anybody touched the structure. Then I spent the next 15 minutes trying to call every number I had connected to Cedar Creek Estates. Nobody answered. Not Brent. Not the field office. Not the emergency contact. Nothing. And somewhere around midnight, sitting alone in a Hampton and staring at my phone, I started getting this feeling in my stomach I still can't really describe. Because deep down, before I even saw it myself, I think part of me already knew. I booked the first flight back to Tennessee the next morning, barely slept the entire trip. You ever have one of those moments where your brain keeps trying to convince you things aren't as bad as you think they are? Like maybe Leon misunderstood something. Maybe they damaged the fence. Maybe the bulldozer clipped the porch by accident. My mind kept inventing smaller disasters because the real possibility felt too insane to accept. Then I pulled onto Willow Bend Road and saw the dust. There were still machines moving when I got there. Huge yellow excavators crawling across the back acreage like dinosaurs. And right where my rental house should have been, there was just open sky. I actually stopped the truck in the middle of the road and stared for a second because my brain couldn't process the shape of what I was looking at. It's weird seeing absence where something familiar used to exist. Your eyes keep trying to rebuild it automatically. The porch should have been there. The chimney should have been there. That ugly little basketball hoop Leon zip-tied to the fence should have been there. Instead, the whole place looked like somebody stomped it flat with a giant boot. Roof folded inward. Bricks scattered everywhere. Insulation hanging out of debris piles like dirty snow. And wrapped around the property was temporary orange construction fencing. Already installed, already staked into the ground, like they'd fully absorbed my land into the project overnight. I got out of the truck without even shutting the door. One of the workers noticed me first. Then another. The energy changed immediately. You know how job sites usually sound loud as hell? Engines, radios, guys yelling over machinery? It slowly went quiet one machine at a time until all you could hear was an excavator idling somewhere in the distance. Then Brent appeared, walking toward me fast. Not confident this time. Nervous. His hard hat was under his arm, and he kept wiping sweat off his forehead even though it wasn't that hot outside. "Caleb," he said, trying way too hard to sound calm. "Listen, there's been a situation." I remember looking at him and thinking, this man already knows exactly how screwed he is. I pointed at the rubble. "What the hell is this?" He started talking immediately, fast, corporate, rehearsed panic. There was a surveying discrepancy with one of the preliminary maps and the demo crew. I cut him off. "You demolished my house." "It was an accident." "Do you have a demolition permit for my address?" Silence. Just dead silence. A couple workers nearby suddenly got real interested in their boots. I asked again, "Do you have a permit?" Brent swallowed hard. "We believe the parcel was included in Phase 1 clearing." That wasn't an answer. That was lawyer language. And right there, standing in the dirt where my house used to be, I realized something important. They weren't confused. Confused people stop working when they notice a mistake. These people fenced off my property and kept building. That means somebody made a decision. I got back in my truck and drove straight downtown to the county building office. Didn't even stop for food. I walked in covered in dust, still wearing airport clothes from the day before, and asked the woman at the permit counter if anybody had filed demolition paperwork for 214 Willow Bend. She typed for maybe 20 seconds, then looked up. "No permit on file." I asked her to check again. Nothing. Then I asked for the master development plan for Cedar Creek Estates. And that's when the whole thing cracked open. The official county survey showed the property lines clear as day. My lot wasn't part of their development. Not even close. They'd crossed almost 18 feet over the legal boundary. 18 feet. Do you understand how insane that is for a professional development company? That's not somebody misreading a tape measure. That's negligence on a level that borders on arrogance. The woman behind the counter actually muttered, "Oh my God," under her breath when she saw it. I asked how fast they could send inspectors. Turns out, pretty fast when somebody illegally demolishes a residential structure. The next morning, 2 county inspectors showed up along with a surveyor carrying enough equipment to launch satellites. Brent was there too, pacing around pretending to take phone calls while everyone measured the property markers. I stood near the curb with coffee from a gas station, just watching. Didn't yell. Didn't threaten anybody. Didn't need to. Because every few minutes another official would look toward the construction site with that expression people get when they realize paperwork's about to ruin someone's month. Around noon, one inspector walked over to Brent and handed him a bright orange document. Even from across the lot, I could read the words. Stop work order. And man, I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel good. Everything stopped. Grading. Concrete pours. Framing crews. Utility work. Millions of dollars in development activity froze instantly because somebody decided my little rental property didn't matter enough to double-check. By Friday, the entire subdivision looked abandoned. No trucks. No compressors. No workers blasting country music from toolboxes. Just silence. That's when the phone call started. Brent called me 6 times the first day. Then the regional office started calling. Then attorneys. Everybody suddenly wanted to work together toward a reasonable solution. Funny how corporations discover humility the second money starts bleeding out. But here's the part people don't expect. I wasn't actually angry anymore. Not in the explosive sense. Honestly, once the shock wore off, I became weirdly calm. Because I realized something sitting in that empty lot one evening while the sun went down over the rubble. They had accidentally given me leverage. See, if they damaged the roof, maybe I'd get an insurance fight and a headache. If they cracked the foundation, maybe I'd spend months arguing over repairs. But they completely erased the structure, which meant everything had to be reevaluated from scratch. And in Millhaven, zoning laws had recently changed. That detail turned out to matter a whole lot. I hired a land use attorney named Denise Crowley. Former prosecutor, sharp as broken glass, probably drank more coffee than water. First time we met, she walked the property in complete silence for 10 minutes. Then finally looked at me and said, "You know they may have accidentally upgraded your investment, right?" That was the first time I smiled all week. Because under the updated zoning code, a rebuild no longer had to match the original structure. Since the old house was legally gone, the lot now qualified for a duplex build with expanded square footage. Translation? The little brick rental earning me modest monthly income could now become a high-end duplex worth nearly triple. And the best part? Cedar Creek Estates was partially responsible for creating that opportunity. Denise started assembling numbers like she was building a murder case. Lost rental income, demolition cleanup, architectural plans, utility reconnection, property regrading, future income projections. Every spreadsheet somehow got uglier for them. Meanwhile, the subdivision remained frozen. Buyers started asking questions online. Local Facebook groups got involved. Somebody posted drone footage of the stalled development with the caption, "They demolished the wrong damn house." That clip spread everywhere locally. Then came the meeting. And trust me, that meeting did not go the way Brent expected. When I walked into that conference room, Brent and two of his executives were already there, sitting stiff-backed like they were about to lecture me on some minor inconvenience. And I carried nothing but a folder full of city violation notices, survey maps, and detailed cost breakdowns. They expected me to storm in, fists clenched, red-faced, yelling about my house. I didn't. I just set the folder down, looked at all three of them, and said, "You didn't just destroy a house. You destroyed income, future plans, and opportunity." That silence hit harder than any scream could have. Brent shifted in his chair, tried that fake smile, like maybe I was bluffing, and I leaned forward, calm but deliberate, and started laying it out for them. I told them what it would cost to replace the house at full market value. Then I detailed every penny it would take to build a new duplex under the current zoning code, using licensed contractors of my choosing. I showed them lost rental income, the forecast difference between the old house and what could now legally be built. I even drew diagrams showing how their mistake had actually increased the value of my property, literally doubling the potential revenue if I played my cards right. The air in that room shifted slowly. You could see it in their eyes, Brent's jaw tightening, the two execs scribbling furiously, muttering under their breath about investors, buyers, and stalled timelines. I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. I wasn't angry for the sake of anger. I was asking for restitution, leverage turned into fairness, and they knew if they refused, their project would hemorrhage money faster than they could spin it into PR. They asked for time, which I granted, because every day the subdivision sat frozen was another day their losses mounted. Meanwhile, I went home, planned out the duplex design in my head, imagined the tenants moving in, the monthly checks hitting my account, like a quiet revenge fantasy playing out in spreadsheets and floor plans. I even walked the lot at sunset a few times, imagining the walls going up, the porch, the new kitchen, the better bathrooms, the bigger bedrooms. It was weirdly satisfying, and I started to realize the irony. A destruction that should have cost me years of stress actually positioned me to gain more than I ever had before. 2 weeks later, Brent called. Not cautiously, not apologetically. He said, "We'll cover the entire cost. You get to build the duplex your way." Signed in writing, stamped, notarized, everything. And just like that, the site thawed. Trucks came back. Crews started moving again, but this time not over my property. The duplex went up exactly how I wanted it. Every nail, every brick, every inch accounted for. Leon got first choice on one unit when it was ready, still paying on time, still watering the plants. The rental income? Almost double what the old house generated. And for the first time, I truly felt that strange satisfaction that comes from surviving a mess someone else created and turning it into advantage. I think about that moment sometimes, walking the lot, sunlight bouncing off the newly painted siding, a duplex that shouldn't have existed if not for someone else's mistake. And it hits me that life has a funny way of handing you power when you're calm enough to recognize it. You see, most people would have been blinded by rage, threatened litigation, wasted years in courts. I didn't. I let the universe, and Brent, show me how leverage works, and then I collected it deliberately, calmly, unapologetically. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night sometimes. What if it hadn't been me? What if this had been someone who panicked, who yelled, who threatened, who let the anger consume them before thinking strategically? Would Brent's company have just bulldozed another house and moved on, leaving someone else ruined? Where's the line between accountability and opportunity? When is destruction truly punishment, and when is it just the start of something better? I guess that's the debate I want you to have in the comments, because I could tell you all the numbers, all the spreadsheets, all the meetings, but the real lesson isn't in the paper. It's in the way you respond when the world throws an insane, impossible, completely unfair mess right in your lap. So here's my question to you. What would you have done? Would you have let them get away with it? Or would you have found a way to turn it to your advantage? Drop your thoughts below. Let's get real, because I promise you this story is exactly the kind of thing that sparks heated debates in small towns and big cities alike. And if you enjoy watching a regular person quietly flip a disaster into a win while everyone else panicked, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves stories of revenge, resilience, and just the strange ways life balances the scales. Because sometimes the house that disappears isn't the end, it's just the beginning.